You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. Welcome to the show, Mish.
Pleasure to be back on. You caught me on the road here. We're doing one from Baraboo, Wisconsin here, where I'm at the International Crane Foundation today, photographing whooping cranes.
Wow, that is something else. A huge, magnificent sight, no doubt.
Well, it's not a huge site, but it's the only place in the world where you can see literally every species of crane in the world. And some of them are in open areas where they'll have, nets where the birds can, fly around and it's a natural habitat. Some of them really look penned up. But they've got 3 exhibits where the birds have quite a lot of room to roam around with, and they're paired. And whooping cranes meet for life, and there's a pair nesting right now, sitting on a nest with eggs, and they swap every 2 hours. The male and the female crane will switch places to sit on the nest. Kind of interesting.
Well, I remember back in the 60s, they were down to what, a couple of dozen pairs? That's it?
They were down to, I believe, 31 or 21. 31, I think. Now there's about 600. So a fair amount of recovery here. They were really on the verge of going extinct.
Well, I wonder if investors in the California pension system are about to go extinct. A court ruling there is really something that pensioners everywhere have to worry about. Maybe explain.
Well, yeah, the city, actually several cities in California have gone bankrupt. But the latest one here is San Bernardino, where the U.S. bankruptcy judge ruled against the bondholders and said, it was okay for the city to screw the bondholders to bail out the pensioners. Now, the judge also ruled that it was okay for it to go the other way. The 3 federal judges in California ruled that pensions are not sacrosanct. So, but what did the city do? The city decided, just as Stockton did, that they didn't want to go in with, pick a fight with CalPERS. That's the California pension for all the public union workers. There's a conflict of interest here, Jim. These city officials have their own pension plans in them. So, they can say, well, we didn't want to fight CalPERS. What they're really saying is we didn't want our own pensions reduced. So, and then look at the situation in Illinois, where we had a Supreme Court ruling last week that said changes that they wanted to make in Illinois were unconstitutional. Well, who ruled on that? Judges. What are the judges in? Judges have their own pension plans here with the state, and the judicial pension plan in Illinois is one of the poorest funded, so they would have taken the biggest hit. So what do you expect? A unanimous ruling for judges and city officials to choose to take their own pension, whether that's in the best interest of the city or the best interest of the state. Who cares? As long as we get ours, Jim.
So, in other words, if you hold a state or municipal bond, the money that you expected to earn on it could be taken and used to pay off these pensions.
What's going to happen is the same thing happened in Detroit, where and the bigger you were, the less haircut you got. So the police and fires pensions hardly got any haircuts at all. The little guy got 10 or 15%. And the bondholders absolutely got stiffed. And we're seeing the same thing here in California. What do you think that's going to do to yields on bonds for municipal bonds for any city that has a pension problem? Chicago's, and this was the reason why I said it was bad news for Chicago, or actually bondholders in general, but any city that's in trouble are going to see, and we've already seen it, the Chicago school bonds spiked almost 300 basis points, 3 full percentage points above what similar, cities are doing. Why? Because Chicago has a pension crisis, and And if the Illinois legislature passes a bill, there's one pending, to let cities go bankrupt, we're probably going to see the Chicago School District go bankrupt. And worsening the problems for Chicago, their bonds were recently cut to junk by Moody's, and the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, came out and called it irresponsible. So I did a post saying it's irresponsible to tell the truth. Now, what do you expect these rating agencies to do? S&P is the worst of the lot, and the Moody's is probably the best of the lot. They're trying to avoid another finger point at themselves for what happened in the housing crisis, rating all of these garbage bonds, AAA that went from AAA to default in a matter of months. So Moody's is actually trying to do its job now, and Mayor Rahm Emanuel called that irresponsible.
So anyone trying to sell you a U.S. municipal bond, be warned.
Well, look at whether or not the city has any pension problems, and if the city does have pension problems, and Chicago's right at the top of the list, I would say avoid those bonds. Absolutely.
Some dismal U.S. retail sales to report.
Yeah. And economists expected retail sales to rise. And they didn't. They came in flat. They expected producer prices to rise. They didn't. They were negative. They expected import-export prices to rise, and those didn't either. So I'm looking at all of this, and I said, do you really believe that the Fed is going to hike here? The consensus range for export prices was 0.01, or was minus 0.2 to plus 0.3, and we actually got minus 0.7. So outside the range of any economist's estimate. The same thing happened with producer prices. The producer prices fell outside the range of any economic projection. And I just saw again today, and it's up on my screen, where economists are forecasting, the U.S., we're going to contract in the first quarter, and then we're seeing rebounding for the entire rest of the year. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Fed model, which actually got it right for the first quarter, is predicting under 1% growth. The economists say, we believe consumers are going to spend, in spite of the fact that consumers are saying they're not going to spend. So, we'll see. I think GDP in the second quarter is barely going to be positive, if it's positive. In other words, I think we're in recession right now.
We'll have more with Mish Shedlock right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. Just before the break, you said you believe we're in recession right now. I wonder about oil prices. They've been climbing, but is there anything to really support growth in oil prices?
I don't know whether there's anything to support growth in oil prices. There's certainly a little bit of speculation here that they're going to rebound and up and away again, which is the same as the economist's forecast. Here's the headline in the Wall Street Journal: the economist's forecast. Here we grow again. Well, we'll see. But if oil prices rise, that is going to actually pressure the U.S. trade deficit, and imports, U.S. is still importing oil, subtract from GDP. Exports add to GDP, but export prices were down 0.7%. So if oil prices go back up and export prices don't rebound, that doesn't weigh very well for second quarter GDP. I'm thinking a number of things are going to go wrong here, without saying exactly what, but I'm looking at imports and exports. And then look at wages. Wages have gone up, and that's going to hurt corporate earnings. So, and when corporate earnings go down, what do? They stop expanding so many stores. And, if you have to pay someone $15 an hour versus paying someone $8 an hour or $9 an hour, you know what? There's a lot of stores that are going to be marginal. And we've already seen, huge numbers of planned shutdowns of corporate layoffs in retail stores. And the expansion is not going to be there that everyone thinks. I mean, I keep asking this question, and they keep building them anyway, but do we need another Walmart? And where do we need one? So, and that is, those kinds of places, and McDonald's, like it or not, those places are adding jobs. But if you have to pay the McDonald's worker $15 an hour, well, you know what? Someone's going to think twice about opening a franchise for McDonald's. So we've got all of these negative pressures, plus the recovery is getting really, really long in the tooth here. We're going in 7 years of expansion. The average time between recessions is about 7 years. So 6.5, something like that. So I think it's quite likely that we're back in recession here, and the economists just plain out and out don't get it.
Well, Target found out the hard way that just repeating what you do in the U.S. doesn't work in Canada. They closed all their stores here. And what's more, they forget too that most Canadians live within 100 miles of the border. We know what the real prices are at Target in Bellingham and Seattle if you live in Vancouver. So don't try to charge me twice as much and expect me to buy it.
Well, that's just it. Someone commented, someone emailed me, just yesterday, and I talked about some stores in California that were actually closing shop. Borders, I think, was one of them, closing a whole chain, and then there was a comic book store that was going to close, and then there's some pizza restaurant, and this guy emailed, why don't they just raise their prices? What? As if consumers are not price sensitive. At some point, I'm surprised we're not there already, but, the price of eating at McDonald's, I did eat at Wendy's today, it was, $7. I didn't even get a drink. I got a chicken sandwich. Actually, I like it there. I think it's very good. I think their fries are very good. The Wendy's over McDonald's 7 days a week. But, my gosh, I mean, at what point are people going to pay, $8, $9, $10, for fast food, and you got a family of four? Yeah, $40. Good grief. The amount of groceries you can get for $40 is fairly staggering. So, at some point, people are going to decide, you know what? I'm not going to eat out at this place. And I'm not saying everyone's going to decide that, but I'm saying enough people are going to decide that, such that traffic slows. So all of these pressures here are building up on corporate profits, on earnings, on expansion of stores, on exports, on oil. If this recovery really gets going here, I'll actually be shocked. If we don't go into recession, we're going to come damn close. I actually think we're in one now.
Yes, I mean, it's pretty well splitting hairs right now, isn't it?
I think so. With that, Jim, I got to run here. I'm on the road. I've got a commitment here. So, as always, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much for chatting with us.
It's my pleasure, Jim. Bye-bye.
My guest has been Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. You're listening to this copyrighted program on HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.